If you're taking a class in survey research, you may need to design and implement a survey research study. For our purposes, we'll assume you are focusing on opinion or survey research, which is different from research via experiments. What's the difference? While both can be used to test hypotheses and develop conclusions, when you are conducting an experiment, you are manipulating an independent variable to measure the effect on a dependent variable. The key term here being manipulate. You are changing something to see if something else changes. A survey, however, is focused on studying people's knowledge, attitudes, opinions, feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. Now, while a survey can be used in an experimental format, like exposing some people to a persuasive message and seeing if their opinions have changed as a result, we usually think of experiments in the physical sciences. This video will cover information related to how to conduct a survey research study, but just the broad strokes. We'll briefly cover what a research project is, and then the steps you take to conduct a research project. But before we get into those 8 steps, we'll take a brief detour into the concept of scientific empiricism. We'll start with what exactly is a research project. It is formal work undertaken systematically to increase the stock of knowledge, including knowledge of humanity, culture, and society, and the use of this stock of knowledge to devise new applications. A key term here is systematic, meaning that there is a method or a system to gathering the data. Research projects are used to establish or confirm facts, reaffirm or validate the results of a previous research project, or expand on past work that has been done, solve problems, be they new problems or those that already exist, support theorems, like in math, where the purpose is to prove something is true from a set of axioms, or to develop new theories, a set of ideas to explain why something is true. Before we get to the 8 steps in conducting a survey research project, let's quickly detour to the topic of scientific empiricism, since if you're in my class, you'll also be learning about this approach, and I don't want to confuse you. John Locke's scientific empiricism philosophy is that experience is what leads to knowledge. That experience, personal or via observation, serves as evidence in our quest for knowledge. We start by discovering the evidence that already exists on the subject and then generate a hypothesis, guessing what we might find. Remember that scientific empiricism focuses on evidence, so you would identify what evidence you might accept as supporting your hypothesis, your guess. Then you collect data to provide that evidence in a systematic, see, there's that word again, systematic, objective, and controlled manner. Once you've gathered that evidence, you'll need to evaluate your data to see if it does indeed support your hypothesis. And then you'll need to defend or justify your conclusions and approach. Remember that term systematic? It means there is a fixed method that you follow. Think of it as steps that you follow in order to get to the end product. If you are cooking, you'll follow a recipe. It tells you what to do and when. In our case, the systematic steps cover conducting a survey research project. But even though it's a different process, you'll notice a lot of similarity with the scientific empiricism approach. And that shouldn't be a surprise, as survey research is a type of empirical research. Just like in cooking, the steps of conducting a survey research project tend to be followed in the same order, but some of the steps can be blended or started in the middle of a previous step. The first step is figuring out the purpose of the study. What do you want to know? To use the cooking analogy, what do you want to make? A main dish? A dessert? That guides all of the next steps. Once you've figured that out, you then ask, who do you want to know it from? That helps you with the second step, determine the sampling plan. This not only addresses the who, but the how. Who meaning what individuals to include in the survey so that you can generalize to a larger population. How refers to how you will contact them. What's the best way to get the information from the people in your study? Do you conduct a telephone, mail, or internet survey? Observe their behavior? And one will have an effect on the other. If you are planning to contact cell phone customers, the who, you'll likely contact them by cell phone, text, or email. The actual list of people you plan to contact, like a customer list, voter registration file, a random digit dial telephone sample, is called your sampling frame. The third step is to develop your research instrument, sometimes called an interview schedule or interview guide, like the questions that you plan to ask. Notice that this is dependent on the first two steps in terms of what questions to include and how those questions are worded or displayed. For example, the language you use will be different if you are interviewing college students than if you were interviewing physicians. And while the same concept can be addressed in a phone survey and an internet survey, the questions will likely be worded or formatted differently. Once you've got your research instrument, you should pilot test or pre-test your questionnaire with a representative sample. This fourth step helps you figure out which questions are poorly worded, aren't getting you the data you were expecting, if the method you have chosen is working or not, and so on. This will allow you to make adjustments before you spend the time and resources to conduct the entire study, which may mean revisiting the first three steps. Just like in cooking, when you may be taste testing or having someone else taste test. The fifth step is to develop a coding scheme and analysis plan. How will you take the answers you get so that you can compile and interpret them? This means you have to think ahead to later steps so you don't end up with a pile of data that you really can't do anything with. If you think you want to determine the average of something, you need to develop a question that will be able to provide you data you can calculate an average on. Oftentimes, this step is combined with the third and fourth steps. You may revise the survey instrument after finding out that the data you got from the pretest isn't usable. Finally, the step you've been waiting for. The sixth step is to actually conduct the survey. Ask those questions of your sample. Now you're really cooking. This stage is often referred to as field work. You are no longer planning, but are out in the field conducting research. Again, part of the seventh step may take place during the previous step, when you actually conduct your statistical analysis and figure out what all that data mean. Back to the cooking analogy, while something is baking, one step may blend with another. You may be assembling the final ingredients or setting the table while your dish is finishing in the oven. In our case, you may be running some statistical analyses while you are nearing the end of your fieldwork step to make sure everything is working out the way you expected, and so you can be prepared for the next step. Then to end the process, the eighth step is to communicate the results to others, what you found out, so that you can increase the stock of knowledge. 8 steps to follow so that you can systematically conduct your own survey research project. With your knowledge of what a research project is, along with your recollection of scientific empiricism, you should be able to design and implement those 8 steps. While this doesn't guarantee your project will come out perfectly every time, all you cooks out there know that the final product is much more digestible if you follow a recipe. Think of these steps as your recipe to success.